Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. Oh my goodness, we have a Super Bowl set up, but man, let's not go there yet because we had a heck of a day in the conference championships. But before we get to that, let's go through a few pieces of business items. Got to get through these. My Super Bowl notes, I project those to be out on Wednesday. Full breakdown of the game, probably over 10 pages. I may go a little more all out on this, make it 15. You'll want to find that on my X profile at Jim Coventry NFL. This show you're watching now, RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. In the offseason, we're going to run it Mondays and Fridays. Next season, and Anthony will continue to be on the Monday shows for sure. Anthony and I are doing a podcast for RotoWire every Monday starting in March for the entire offseason. And then Anthony's going to be a regular presence on the Daily Show when we start next season for sure. So really excited about it. Anthony, any thoughts on the upcoming work together we'll be doing?
Now, I'm really excited. We've worked together a lot in the past, and finally we get to put it all together here at RotoWire. Really want to make this the best NFL programming in the world. You know how I am. I'm very competitive and want to get this show number one.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. It's great when you can work with somebody that understands the NFL inside and out. That's what I strive for. So very excited to work with you. Alex, good morning. And yes, the Niners got it done. Before I get to the news and notes, I will say this. So I told people to bet the Niners -7. Well, what happens, I don't know if all draft books do sports books do this, Anthony, but DraftKings, I always keep my eye out because there's buyouts. And when the 49ers went up 10 late in the game, I said to myself, they're going in a shell. They're up 2 scores. The Lions are going to walk down the field and score. And I got the cash out at that point up 10, and I got my money plus a 15% profit. Had I let it ride, I would have lost everything. So do all sports books do the buyout, or is that just a couple books that do that?
Yeah, well, the cash out is at most sports books, especially the legal sports books here in the United States. And you got to get it at the right place. And it seems like if you cashed out with a profit, you definitely cash out at the right time.
Yeah, because that was the only frame in time I could have gotten that. When the Lions started to move the ball, I bet you that would have gone down by the minute. It would have been like taking less money. So it was one of those opportunities. And my point is, this is not a brag. My point is to teach. So my point is this: if you're playing a game and you have a bet and you see that the bet's shaky, but you're covering, keep an eye on the cash out. Better to make some money than to end up getting a backdoor cover against you and losing. Back to the business. Next Monday and Tuesday, before the Super Bowl, 58 football analysts for Super Bowl 58. Again, it's going to be regular time Monday. Tuesday is going to be an evening. That's going to be a great show. You won't want to miss that. Again, experts from all over. You'll love that. I'll be on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Channel again tonight, which is Monday if you're watching this live, 8 to 10 Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 3. Finally, at RotoWire, we got your fantasy and gambling content for every sport. College basketball, golf, NASCAR, even bowling. Our baseball is the best on the planet. Free with your 2-day trial, no credit card needed. Just go to rotowire.com/Jim. Get you all set up. All right, Anthony. Let's get to the games. What was your first takeaway from the weekend, conference championships?
Underdogs were biting, right? But the San Francisco 49ers managed to do what the Baltimore Ravens couldn't do, and that's come from behind against the underdog and win a football game.
It couldn't say it better than that. That encapsulates the day. But let's go chronologically. I know most shows are going with the night game first, maybe because they filmed them right then or taped them. But let's just go chronologically. Let's go Chiefs, Ravens first and start here. And I'll kind of go through my timeline and we'll both react to this. We'll kind of relive the experience, see what we could take away from these games. So look, I started out with this. Christmas Day, right? The Chiefs got smoked by the Raiders. Now, the Raiders had a couple defensive scores. They couldn't do anything offensively. Raiders ran the ball down their throats. At that point, the Raiders actually had a chance to win the division, and the Chiefs could have missed the playoffs. I didn't think that would be the case. I thought that, all right, the Chiefs will make the playoffs. They will win the division. But I did not see a deep Super Bowl run coming because that offense was deeply flawed. Anthony, thoughts on the Chiefs getting to this point?
I was always backing the Chiefs, sometimes prematurely, a lot of times prematurely this year. I was waiting for them. Okay, it's, after Thanksgiving, they're going to turn it on. Okay, we're getting close to Christmas time. They're going to turn it on. And going into the playoffs, it was the only time they had to turn it on. And we saw, and yes, they were playing beaten up defenses and maybe inferior teams. And then we get to Buffalo. And I felt like a lot of people were backing Buffalo because they were one of the hottest teams in the AFC. And then Kansas City gets it done. And then we hear the excuses. Well, Buffalo, they were all sorts of banged up on defense and they were lacking weapons for Josh Allen. And then we get to this point in Baltimore. It seems like not many people, including the sports books, because Kansas City, they were as much as a 5-point underdog. I think the closing line value was plus 4.5. And then we see Kansas City go in here once again and get the job done. And to me, it's battle-tested Mahomes, Andy Reid, a lot of the, Travis Kelce. And I sent you the video. It was going around Twitter before the game. Travis Kelce, to me, he set the tone. When Justin Tucker was trying to warm up and Kelce says, hey, my quarterback needs to warm up now, and tosses the helmet and Tucker's balls away. And it's funny, but it almost sets the tone. It's like, here comes the big bully trying to kick the kid out of the sandbox.
Hey, you know what? All right. When I was older, I'm only playing low-level basketball, but I was that guy. You're not messing with my teammates. I may be short, but I'm the enforcer, and you're not pulling any BS. You're not getting my guys off their game. Love that Kelce did that. Now, but again, we're going to get to the details of the game, but the Ravens, it was so hard to argue that this was the best team in the NFL this season. MVP play from Lamar Jackson. Todd Monken had that offense building throughout the season. The defense, all 3 levels solid. It wasn't like they had like this through the roof superstar play, although Kyle Hamilton certainly looked that way. Everybody did their part. They were schemed up exquisitely by Mike McDonald. Offenses were just on their heels all year. For a period of time, they played that way. They did not play that way for 60 minutes in this game. We're not getting to the details yet, but anything, thoughts as Baltimore came into this game?
We've seen it a lot this season, and we saw it against Houston especially, where this team, they get off to a slow start, and then they manage in the second half to turn it on. We saw it a little bit where Baltimore, they tightened up defensively in the second half, but the Chiefs, they did just enough. I think there was only 3 points scored in the second half, right?
That was it. Yeah. It was like nothing. And
yeah.
So when I previewed this game, I made it a real strong point. And I told people, look, the smart pick intellectually is the Ravens. I said, if they play 10 times, they win 7, maybe 8. But I said, look, this is my big analysis. And I go, this is the weakest analysis I'll do because it's not X's and O's. I said, Steve Spagnuolo is going to give Lamar Jackson a lot of trouble. He is going to struggle in this game because Spagnuolo has the defensive parts he needs. And I picked this game 19-16. It was somewhat close to that, but it was definitely an under. It was definitely the under. 35 points. It was 44 on the bet. But, and like you said earlier, with the teams like the 49ers you mentioned, when a big play was needed in this game, it was the Chiefs. When the Ravens need a big play, they usually fell short. Anthony.
The Ravens, they were so big play dependent. And we saw it the first score to Zay Flowers, the big play. What we were missing were those small chunk plays that we were used to seeing from the Ravens to control the game. And it just wasn't there for them. Even Lamar, if you took the over on his rushing yards, you lost that bet.
Yes.
He wasn't that same player. And I remember watching Brock Purdy. I'm like, Brock Purdy's doing a better Lamar Jackson impression than Lamar Jackson did today.
On that Lamar Jackson long run, Anthony, 3 years ago, he houses that run. He does not. Obviously, he's super fast. He's not the level of fast he was in his career earlier. 6 years in now, but that should have been a touchdown run. Speaking of the run, Anthony, this is our next point. Going into this game, the Chiefs' run defense was the mark. Now, I know they played a lot of zero coverage, meaning they were putting people down, but you could run on the Chiefs all year. You had Gus Edwards, you had Lamar Jackson, you had an excellent offensive line and a great run scheme, and the RPO you could use as well. I fully expected the Ravens to come out running the ball down the Chiefs' throats. But here was a problem. All season, I have complained Why the heck is Justice Hill in the game? And I know he got yards last week against Houston. I get it. He is not a sustaining runner. He has not moved the chains. He's a 0, 1, 0, 18. Fine, but that 18, beautiful, but the zeros and the ones do not move the chains. Gus Edwards is an excellent NFL running back. He is exactly what they needed, yet they kept having this love affair with Justice Hill. And on the first drive of the game, who's out there? Justice Hill. Who does nothing on the first carry? Justice Hill. Who goes 3 and out? Justice Hill. And in the first half, they hardly ran the ball at all. It was like 4 running back runs. That was it. They came out with a pass-heavy attack against one of the best pass defense in the league, with one of the best coaches of secondaries in the league, and I really felt they went away from their identity in a game they needed it most. Thoughts?
If you take a look and you break it down, Lamar 8 carries, and then Gus and Justice Hill had 3 carries each. Zay Flowers had 2. They only ran the ball 16 times. Half of them was to the quarterback. They were actually managing 5.1 yards per carry. Guess who were the leaders? 6.8 yards a tote for Jackson, 6.7 for Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, I know at one point, I have to go back, he was averaging well over 5 yards a carry in his career. That's probably still sticking.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we're seeing Justice Hill eat away at these carries, honestly, you might as well have given those touches to Dalvin Cook.
You're right. You're 100% right. A washed-up Dalvin Cook is exponentially better than a prime Justice Hill. And so I thought that was one of the first errors, but that love affair they had with Justice Hill, they got away with it because they were a great team, but I never understood who is the one that's deciding this is the guy we're hitching our wagon to, because that is a wrong choice. Even when he has good yardage games, long term, that's a bad bet. All right, moving on.
And before we go, you mentioned Baltimore. They veered off their identity. I feel like we've seen that a lot this postseason, where teams were veering from their identity in these matchups.
And I talk about the hyper-focused nature of playoff football, where coaches come in and you have to have that specific game plan to beat your one specific opponent. You find their weakness. But sometimes these teams, and you're intimating this, overcompensate. You have to still go with your strengths. You can't sell out your strengths in the name of attacking an opponent's weakness. You make that part of the puzzle, but you don't make it the puzzle. And I don't know if they wanted to put the game on Lamar Jackson's shoulders and say, we're going to show everybody the world you're the MVP. But against this defense, that was never going to be a good bet. All right. The Chiefs on offense, Anthony, early in this game, I did think, and I was heavily invested, saying that the Chiefs will run the ball to have their best success. But they surprised me. They did run, but they really, really mixed it up. And here was the thing. And that first few drives of the game, we saw a couple times that Kyle Hamilton was on Travis Kelce. They did not specifically put any player on him. It was whoever was in that area defended him. And Baltimore did not make it a point to try to take out Travis Kelce until the second half. In the first half, they just treat him like a guy. Here's the tight end, number 87, the tight end, whoever that is, there's a tight end, guard the tight end. Kelce crushed them. 9 catches on 9 targets, 96 at a touchdown in the first half. Baltimore didn't make adjustments between drives. They had no inclination that Kelce could beat them. And let Marquez Valdes-Scantling beat you. Let Justin Watson beat you. Even Rashee Rice to a degree. But don't let playoff Travis Kelce beat you. But they did. And Kelce in the first half was the reason, primarily, obviously Mahomes, 17-7 at the half. Thoughts on how Baltimore handled them and how the Chiefs were moving the ball?
I mentioned we were on the Sirius XM show going into this game, and I said, hey, my best props, and I was mentioning Travis Kelce, and historically how he crushes Baltimore, and you had mentioned, well, that was the wink defense, and sometimes analytics and logic go out the window, and some players have a team's number, some teams have a player's number. And really, if you were backing Kansas City to win this game, as I was, and I feel like a lot of people were, then you had to bet on these overs of Travis Kelce, because they were not going to win this game unless playoff Travis Kelce showed up. And really early on for that first half, it was dominant. We saw some of the Mahomes magic where how the hell did he throw that ball? And then it's ending up in Kelce's hands. And it's just the pageantry of football. This is why we love it. Because we see these unbelievable things happen that we cannot explain. And I feel like this is what we got, especially in the first half from Kelce.
So, and we'll get to the second half later, but I will point out the Ravens made a halftime adjustment and Kelce was no longer open. Kelce did have a big catch, but it wasn't, they could not get to him as easily. So the adjustment was always there. They just didn't respect him. So I like what you said, and I completely agree with it. And it was a great player showing up, and that's what the defense gave him. But they had the answers. They just chose not to use them in the first half. Anyway, let's kind of go back to the first half with Baltimore. So Kansas City's getting this early lead, and which was massive for them. Baltimore only had that one big play. And we see it all the time. Lamar has a defender on his back. He shakes him, and now all of a sudden the receivers know, just break out. And Zay Flowers took off downfield. Lamar buys a couple seconds, fires a 30-yard touchdown. Other than that play, Anthony, it was mostly punts, and then the Ravens losing the ball, and Jackson got strip sacked by Charles Omenihu. That was it. They had 70 yards on the touchdown drive. The rest of the half, they had 30, or this is like roughly a 35-ish yards in the rest of the entire half. What was the problem offensively?
I just think they got away from their identity. And Spags and the Kansas City defense, they were ready for Lamar Jackson. I think that the right call, and so it's easy being the Monday morning quarterback, the right call is to beat you with Gus Edwards. They tried to beat him with Lamar, and Spags was ready, and I think that really sums up this entire football game. You mentioned the halftime adjustments defensively. Kansas City didn't score another point in that game, and that game got tight, and there was still no answers. Where were the offensive adjustments going to the third quarter?
And so let's talk about this. So as you mentioned, second half's a completely different story. This thing is 17-7 going into the half. The Chiefs cannot move the ball. They can't move the chains. They're punting on almost every possession. And the other problem, you began to see this. The defense for Kansas City was on the field way too much because they were not killing any clock. Every passing drive, that defense was running out of gas, and you could see it. And the Ravens now, they are moving the ball with ease, but mistakes crush them. Again, we're still 17-7. So no scoring in the third quarter, 0 points. They get in the fourth quarter. Now we get the Zay Flowers exchange. He gets the nice catch inside the 10, and that should be the last play of the third quarter, I believe, or right around there. And he gets that unsportsmanlike contact kind of for taunting. And at first I'm saying, okay, this is a pivotal play. But then Flowers gets the ball back, and they get it inside the 10, and now we have the play of the game. Fourth quarter starts. Flowers catches the pass near the end zone, tries to dive in, and the guy he taunted, L'Jarius Sneed, reaches in, strips the ball before the goal line, and there it goes. What would have been a touchdown, 17-14, the big play was made by the Chiefs when it looked like it was made by the Ravens. What was your mindset at that point?
To me, the game was pretty much over. I know the scoreboard said otherwise, but just that sequence of plays, you make the big play, you're starting to get that momentum, it's home, the crowd's getting back into it, and then there's the taunting call, which that's a discipline issue. And then you get another chance, you're going back in to score, and just the way that sequence, the fumble, the way it all unfolded, it's almost like it's over right there. It felt over. It felt like the whatever air was in that stadium at that point, the crowd getting back into it, it was let out.
Oh, how deflating. And so now, all right, they missed that opportunity. Game still not over. You intimated you knew it was over. But again, Kansas City, another 3 and out, cannot move the ball. So Baltimore gets it back, and they go all the way down into field goal range. And now they look like they got something cooking. They might score a touchdown. They might get a field goal. There's still time in the game. And then Lamar Jackson throws an end zone shot in a triple coverage to Isaiah Likely. super easy interception. I don't know what Lamar Jackson was seeing there, but it was a whole lot of Kansas City jerseys and not a whole lot of Isaiah Likely. And that is a play a championship level quarterback just cannot make, Anthony.
I feel like that's a play we see a lot from the Josh Allens. We've seen it from Lamar trying to overcompensate, trying to do too much. And there was still some time left in that game. I don't think that was a throw that had to be had or it had to be made.
Making too much happen. And again, the result, a catastrophic play. So that was it. Anthony points out Likely put his hand up, but he's like, but again, and don't disagree with you, but the quarterback's got to see all that red. Yeah. And so good point. But as a quarterback, vision is one of your best assets. And again, Isaiah Likely, that's not Randy Moss doing one of those. It was Randy Moss, chuck it up. Anyway, all right. So the Ravens, like we said, Zay Flowers fumbles away. Then the interception by Lar. They still have a chance because the Chiefs, again, can't move the ball. So now they force the punt. Baltimore does get into field goal range. Justin Tucker closed it to 7 points. There's 2:34 left in the game. The Ravens still have 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. So they just basically need, a stop, 3 plays and out, and then they get the ball back with a chance to drive the field. So they have a chance. And remember, Kansas City's defense was so gassed at this point. It was very likely if they hold, they're able to get it. But anyway, and one thing, before I get to the last one, that penalty that by Tony Romo didn't understand what happened. When Roquan Smith took that penalty on 1st and 5, it was genius. I thought he was just going for the 5-yard offside because you want to move the chains there. You don't want to give him a 1st and 5. You want him a 1st and 10. The 5 yards is inconsequential because there's no timeout shuffling involved there. By doing that, but it ended up being a 15, no difference. But that penalty was genius because now 1st and 5, you're going to get that on 3 downs. So anyway, now back to the point. Two wasted downs by the Chiefs, but they burned a 2 timeouts for the Ravens. And now it comes down to one play. It's 3rd down. And if the Chiefs don't get it, they're done. They're going to punt it back, and Baltimore's going to have a chance. Patrick Mahomes, he sees right away. Travis Kelce is getting a lot of attention on this play. They leave him in the block, and it basically wastes a couple defenders. And what does Mahomes do? Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the guy we can't trust, right? But he throws that up so soft and so perfect. And you see Valdes-Scantling, he doesn't trust his own hands. He's trying to get this thing as quickly into his belly as he can. He gets it by his head. He gets it down to his chest. He hits the ground, and that thing is in his belly. And this is not going to be a complete hands catch. This is going to be a body catch because he can't let this go. But again, Mahomes, the perfect pass, the perfect moment. The Chiefs the Ravens certainly weren't looking for it. What were your thoughts there?
Vintage Mahomes, vintage Reed. Only a few quarterbacks are going to attempt that throw. They're going to make that throw in that situation. And it takes 2 to tango. Of course, we've seen MBS drop a lot of crucial passes in his career also this season that have cost Kansas City some games. But to me, it was all about Patrick Mahomes. He put that ball in a place where MBS would have to try to drop that ball and drop it.
Exactly.
It was just perfect ball placement at that time.
So the final narrative on the Chiefs is what I have, and then we'll do one on the Ravens, and then we'll get to the next game for the Chiefs. Look, and we've said it throughout. They played like a champion. They came out with an early game plan, and they were able to attack the Ravens. The Ravens were caught off guard, and that got the Chiefs their early points in this game. They didn't score in the second half, but they made the big plays, including that Valdes-Scantling pass at the biggest times. Defensively, 3 takeaways. Offensively, didn't turn the ball over. Steve Spagnuolo, a couple of perfectly timed blitzes, a lot of zero coverage, a couple busts, although Zay Flowers got open, but most of the time, receivers were mostly not open because we said going in, the Chiefs secondary had a vast advantage over the receivers of the Ravens. So for this team, Every year we know the Super Bowl, every team says they want to be in the Super Bowl. For the Chiefs, it's a legit expectation. The regular season may not have been fantastic. End result, they're back. Thoughts on the Chiefs?
We got the best version of the Chiefs and Mahomes and Kelsey in the past 2 games. 2 games where, okay, you want to give him a mulligan against Miami, fine. You'll get past that, but you're not going to get past Buffalo with the way this offense has been playing. And if you go look what Mahomes did, 17 for 23, completed 73.9% of his passes. And then this past game against Baltimore, 30 for 39, 76.9%. I mean, this is when we see the best version of this. I don't know. Do you want to call him this generation's this era's Tom Brady? Because I think that conversation's fair to be had.
Especially now with another advancement to a Super Bowl. And if they win, wow, right? Wow, and he's so young still. Now, the Ravens side. Look, I feel terrible for Lamar Jackson. 2-4 in playoff games. The win against Houston, that win did nothing for his reputation in like the football circles, talking about him being like a championship quarterback. That game was not a tough game. It was a layup, not Jackson's fault. And Jackson played wonderfully in that game. This was always going to be the type of game that put the stamp on who the community believes he is. And he came up small. Now, I know he had the Zay Flowers touchdown pass. That wasn't a touchdown. So, I mean, you give him credit for that. He did have the one touchdown that actually worked the Flowers. But overall, taking bad sacks, maybe, he probably should have ran a lot more, but certainly not coming up with the big plays when they needed them most. And that interception is going to be talked about for a long time. Now, look, his story is not complete. He's only been in the league for 6 years. He has a lot of football left. But unless he gets to a Super Bowl, the questions every year now are going to be, can he win the big one? Every year they make the playoffs. That's going to be the massive, big question. Anthony?
I want to play the devil's advocate with Lamar Jackson, because I support Lamar Jackson. When the cameras, you can see the emotion. It affects him. He cares. Great for the league, great for the community. But I think he's judged unfairly, because when you look, like, I get that they surrounded him with new weapons. Zay Flowers is still a rookie. Mark Andrews, you can make the case that, were they better off? Because Isaiah Likely was filling that role well. Was taking those opportunities away from Isaiah Likely the right thing to do to get Mark Andrews back in there coming off this injury in such a short period? Then you got guys like Bateman, he's a bust first-round pick. Guys like, OBJ's probably on the brink of retirement. Does he have enough? Like, we talk about Gus Edwards. He's a fine running back.
Right.
Where's Jay? I just don't know if Lamar has the weapons. And I know it's is it an excuse, or is it the truth? How far does this Baltimore team go with a healthy J.K. Dobbins? How far does it go in maybe year 2 under with Zay Flowers, and maybe a better supporting wide receiver than an aging OBJ and Rashad Bateman?
You're absolutely right. And I never thought, everybody kept saying how the Ravens have the best weapons they've had. Maybe they're better than what they had, because when they had Willie Snead and guys like that, this is better. But this is not a great set of weapons. I am not sold on that for a minute. And this is now not to compare him and Mahomes, but talk about it with Mahomes. At least he still has Kelsey, but Kelsey's obviously a much slower version of what he was. And then after that, you got Rashee Rice as a rookie. And it was like he didn't have a lot. And Pacheco has no vision. He's just like run downhill. And that's great. But he has no vision. But yet, here you go, Mahomes lifting that up. So you see in Tom Brady over the years, obviously, because that's a discussion you got to have. These are the guys that win the Super Bowls. So, like Ric Flair says, to be the man, you got to beat the man, right? Woo! I got Ric Flair in there. But all right, Lions 49ers, Anthony. Wow. I just wow. It starts and it ends with that. When this game started, though, I will say this. The stage was not too big for the Detroit Lions. And 49ers, as always, they were going to defer to get the ball in the second half. Lions wanted the ball. It's the way it was going to work, just like with Green Bay. And they get that ball. And we knew they could run on the 49ers. And, man, on that first drive, did they ever. They got it going with Montgomery. And then a great designed to Jamison Williams. He gets a 42-yard rushing attempt for a touchdown, and they're on the board right away. What were the initial thoughts there?
I felt like, the Lions were that underdog in a boxing match that came out swinging and caught the favorite off guard. I don't think the 49ers were ready for that type of attack. And I said it going in, the Lions are the last team the 49ers want to face. I think they really match up well with them. And we saw that yesterday.
So they score the first touchdown, go up 7-0, and then the 49ers. Now my mind's going to miss me. Is that the drive they missed the field goal, or did they punt on that drive? They may have punted on that drive, the first drive, right? I think the first drive was a punt.
Yeah, I think the second was a missed field goal.
Yes. So, all right. So the 49ers right away, they whiff. And so right away, there's pressure on them. What I loved about the Lions' second drive, that first drive was heavy run. They started to blend in the pass. Ben Johnson coached it up really well. Got the 49ers off balance. They, again, move right down the field. David Montgomery runs one in. It's a 14-0 lead. This is the script against the 49ers you want. You want them playing from behind. It's obviously every team wants that, right? Of course. But with the 49ers specifically, you want to make it tough on them. You want to make them have to be perfect. And Detroit set up that success at 14-0. Any thoughts?
I was, and I had 49ers fans texting me thinking it's over. I said, listen, relax. You get the ball back at halftime. There's a lot of football. I think you're over panicking here a little bit. But there was a part of me that was very much worried about the 49ers being able to crawl back because the offense didn't look great. And defensively, the Lions were doing whatever the hell they wanted. Let's call it what it is. They had no answer for what Jared Goff and these running backs were sending them.
As you mentioned that, the biggest mismatch I thought in this game was we know the Lions love to live in the middle of the field, their passing game. Amon-Ra St. Brown, great player. Sam Laporta, amazing rookie. But the 49ers have been death against defenses in the middle of the field. But in that first half, Detroit was crushing them in the middle of the field with Laporta and St. Brown. That stunned me. I did not see that coming. It was better than I thought it ever could have been. Detroit attacking the middle. Any thoughts there?
Again, I think it's obviously set up by how well they were running the football, and it leaves everything else open. But it's, the same stat lines. When the Lions are at their best, and you go back and look at box scores, it's Laporta and St. Brown with these dominant box scores over everybody else.
So on the 49ers side, now, again, they're now 14-0 here. They had missed the field goal. And at this point, I know Christian McCaffrey's the best running back in the game, full stop. But I also know you can't really run consistently on Detroit. Now, they did the second half, another story for another day. But I really thought the 49ers had such advantages in the passing game against the linebackers and the corners. I thought they were running too much, and they were not having early success. They were getting in bad down and distance situations. And here was the other key, Anthony. In the first half, and we'll talk about the changes in the second later, Detroit was bringing a lot of five-man pressures when we saw the first down not working. And Purdy was under a lot of the rest of those five-man pressures. The 49ers line could not handle those, and it was a very shaky first half because of that pressure. Go ahead.
They didn't look good out of the gate. They couldn't move the football, and I still don't. And I get he played well. I don't trust Brock Purdy. I don't trust Brock Purdy playing from behind. I don't trust Brock Purdy with the game in his hands. Sure, different outcome yesterday against Detroit. Brock Purdy, it wasn't so much his arm. What Brock Purdy managed to escape in the pocket and breaking off those runs late. But to me, there's something off here. Like, he does just enough, and that's fine. But, I need to see Brock Purdy in a spot like the Super Bowl to really make my best judgment, because when he faces adversity, I think he comes up small a lot.
Hard to argue with that. When he was under pressure, that Malcolm Rodriguez interception, and at that point it was 14-7, and the 49ers, it was their chance to tie the game, and instead the interception puts them in a bad spot, and the Lions come down the field. It's 21-7 now. Now at 21-7, The Lions, they had been passing successfully, but they went back wisely to the running game. They started running the ball. They were trying to shorten the game. They even ran that 3rd and 12 with Jahmyr Gibbs, a duo downhill running, goes for 12 or 12 plus yards. They move the chains. And at this point, my concern was if the 49ers can't stop this rushing attack, they don't have to pass a whole lot, Detroit, and they could bleed the clock with that lead and continue to score. That's what we were looking at going into the half. And actually, Campbell kicks a field goal. It's 24-7. The running game was cooking. And I'm just wondering how Detroit's not going to bleed the clock, like I said, and the 49ers are not going to be able to get enough possessions to be able to match them. What were your thoughts going into the half?
The game looked over, but I'm never going to count out a Kyle Shanahan team. It's well coached, and despite Brock Purdy, there's a lot of playmakers. And we saw it coming out. Like Christian McCaffrey started running the ball really well. That offense started humming a little bit. And then on the other side of it, we talk about defensive adjustments where the San Francisco 49ers defense, they only conceded another 7 points in the fourth quarter after being pummeled in the first half. So as much credit as people want to put on the offense, because the offense had to do their thing. If that defense doesn't show up and what you're saying happened, hey, are they going to get enough possessions? Well, if Detroit scored maybe one more time, there wasn't going to be enough possession. So a lot of credit should go to that defense of the 49ers.
100%. And we'll talk about some specifics as we go on. So second half starts, the 49ers get the ball, and they immediately look great, sail right past midfield. But once they get past midfield, they started to get tight again. Purdy was under some pressure, and they end up just kicking a field goal. But it's a 14-point game, so a little bit of hope. But you were really hoping out of the gate that they would come down with the halftime, momentum of scoring a touchdown and making a statement. They didn't. Were you concerned when they just came up with 3 out of that first drive?
A little, but they still put points up. You couldn't walk away with no points. The fact that they got 3, that's at least a little bit of momentum to build off of. But yes, there's a concern when you're not being able to score out the gate, because that's why Shanahan wants to give the ball away and get it back in the first half anyway. He wants to be able to come out of the second half strong. No points, yeah, real big concern. But 3, all right, there's still a game to be played.
So we're 24-10. And now the Lions, this is their opportunity. That was that big 49ers first drive. It was only 3 points. The Lions had to be happy with that, knowing they'd probably come out of the gate hot. Now the Lions, are they going to come in and run it down their throats? And at first, they were breezing down the field. It looked like the same Detroit offense of the first half. 49ers had no answer. Whether they were running, throwing in the middle of the field, it was just move, move, move. And then Detroit gets a 3rd and 4. And we always know what Dan Campbell's going to do. They're playing for 4 downs, and that's fine. No problem with that. But the play call, they gave a rushing attempt to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Throw the ball to him. If you're going to run it, give it to Monty or give it to Gibbs. But they ran the ball, and it was not a good run. It didn't. They were at least, I think they got 1 yard on it. It was a play that was cute. But do you want cute in a game where you've been beating them with what you do best? You got cute. All right, so 4th down. Again, at this point. Now, look, I'm not going to fight with Dan Campbell. He has lived on going on 4th down all season long. That's what he does. And that's what made the team the great team they were. But you have a chance to put the 49ers down 3 scores here. Sometimes I talk about situation and circumstance. If it's a regular season game, great, go for it. If it's a game that's super close, a game you're trailing, I see all these scenarios. But the mentality and with the success your offense has had of putting you up 3 scores, it makes it tighter on the 49ers. Again, Dan Campbell's done this all year, so I get it. But I thought it was a lack of situational awareness. Thought?
The whole Dan Campbell thing, it started for me with the Dallas game. To me, he gave that game away. And I get this is what Dan Campbell does, and this is what has brought the Detroit Lions success. But I felt like he got a little bit too cute that game and, putting, what was it, week 18, putting Laporta out there, gets him banged up, doesn't really skip a beat. They're fine in the playoffs. But I think he takes way too many chances. You bring up situational football. This is not the game to get cute. You have the opportunity to slay the beast and get the Detroit Lions, a franchise that has not won anything since Dick LeBeau or whoever it was, the defensive back who turned coach in the 50s and 60s. This team doesn't win, and you have the chance to get them to a Super Bowl. You got to take the points. You just have to take the points. And to me, this goes on Dan Campbell.
And I mean, there are some that are going to say the field goal is not a guarantee. And I understand that. It's a pretty high probability. I want to draw up one more important point here. This was the beginning, that 4th and 3, where the 49ers understood the importance of getting that pass rush going, getting Jared Goff on the move, making him uncomfortable. This was the time where he began to be under duress. And when he's under duress, he is a bad quarterback. And we saw, there were some drops in the second half, but there were a lot of passes that were not close to where they needed to be. And it was because Goff was under pressure. The 49ers realized their only chance was that anytime there was a passing down, you had to bring the heat. And that was part of the incomplete passes on critical downs like this they threw. Anyway, so as we just talked about, they don't extend it to 3 scores. They come out with 0 points. So it's still 24-10. 49ers have a little bit of life. They move quickly down the field. And then there's the Brandon Ayuk play. Kindle Vindor, we know, is a terrible defensive back, depth piece. Jerry Jacobs is on IR. Emmanuel Mosley was out all season almost with an injury. So they just needed bodies. Well, that's the play where the ball goes off his hands, off his face mask, bounces back to Ayuk. It was an overthrown ball, would have been incomplete at worst. And then, of course, we grab the ball by Brandon Ayuk. And there it is. What do you think of that play?
It's a play that could have went the other way easily. But, how many times have we seen the ball bounce? I call it the Patriots bounce, where it bounces in your direction. And Ayuk just got the right bounce off that play. Yes, it could have gone either way. I don't want to say, it's this heroic pass by Brock Purdy. I think a lot of luck was involved there. Go ask Eli Manning about luck throws and catches.
Yes. Enough there. And that's football, right? Football's a high variance game. Crazy things happen. The ball's not a round ball. It takes weird, crazy bounces, and that's exactly what football's about. Ayuk comes down with the play. They end up getting a touchdown to Ayuk on a 3rd down. Again, it was a chance where they were not getting the ball moving on 1st and 2nd down a lot, and it was a very tight situation, and that was not an easy touchdown. There were 2 defenders in the area. Purdy makes a nice throw, but now it's within a touchdown. And so now, here's what I wanted to point out. On that drive specifically, I mentioned in the first half, Detroit was bringing a lot of 5-man pressures. In the second half, I noticed they were just rushing their front 4. The protection for the 49ers held up better because of it. Obviously, it's a numbers game. But if you didn't notice that when you were watching it, that was why Purdy was able to have a little more escapability on some of those runs, a little more time on some of those passes. That one extra defender was making Purdy very, very uncomfortable. Maybe that was a mistake on the Lions' part. Again, it worked in the first half, and they were the lead. The 49ers were always going to have to pass more, but they backed up by putting an extra player in coverage as opposed to making it tougher on Purdy. Any thoughts on that?
Purdy did a good job. Didn't look great. I'll keep going there. I still don't trust him, but he did a good job and made the throws that had to be made. And again, the escapability, his overall football awareness was on point yesterday.
So the Lions now, look, they have had some rough times for decades. This game's now 24-17. It's a touchdown game. Lions fans are starting to get a little bit nervous. 49ers fans are like, okay, well, we got a lot more work to do, but we are within a score, so there's that. And then the first offensive play after the Ayuk touchdown, a handoff to Jahmyr Gibbs, results in disaster. It was a little miscommunication on where he took the ball, I think. fumbles it. Eric Armstead recovers. 49ers just need a few plays. McCaffrey's in the end zone. Second score of the game. Now, all of a sudden, we got 3 minutes left in the third quarter. A lot of football to be played, and it's tied at 24. And Anthony, I said this. If momentum is a real thing, and if it wasn't already a thing with the Ayuk play, it was really a big deal now. What were your thoughts at that point when it's 24 apiece?
At that point, I saw the 49ers winning this football game. And whenever it's tied, some time left, it can really go either way. But it was a tale of two halves where the Lions were dominant in the first half, and the 49ers, when you can evaporate that type of a lead, that's going to, we talk about deflating a stadium, deflating a team. The 49ers began deflating the Detroit Lions. All the confidence that they once had, hey, we're going to get this done, was now gone. And then when we were tied at 24, it's like, oh, all that work to go up 3 scores, that's gone. And now here's the big Giants going to come and crush us. That's how I just felt like the game got too big for the Detroit Lions.
So the Lions get the ball back, and Goff actually makes a couple of decent passes. But Sam Laporta, there's a drop. I know he gets hit, but that's when he probably should. Josh Reynolds can't hang on to a pass. They could have moved the chains on either of those, but after losing that lead, it's a 3 and out. So on the 2 recent drives, a total of 4 plays. And again, the ball's back to the 49ers, and there are still 2 minutes left in the third quarter. So now the 49ers immediately, they're moving the ball. And I was surprised. 12 minutes left in the game. It's tied. Kyle Shanahan burns a timeout. And I'm thinking to myself, man, burning a timeout in a championship game with 12 minutes left, that is one that could come back to bite you. I mean, look, not the Ravens ended up losing, but man, if they had an extra timeout, they could have played things a little bit differently as well. Did you give any thought to that timeout being burned, or was it just, oh, well, whatever?
They took a chance, right? By running the football. I don't think they were fooling anybody. I think this was just Dan Campbell. Hey, we're going to outman them and punching in with David Montgomery. That obviously doesn't work out. They burned the timeout. And yeah, it does affect the outcome of the game. So what I probably wouldn't have made that play call. I don't think that's the time.
So Shanahan takes the timeout, and then the 2 ensuing plays, Purdy gets sacked on both. Whatever they set up in the timeout didn't help, but the 49ers were still in field goal range. So Jake Moody comes in, and everybody's shaky because he missed one earlier. He does convert. 49ers have their first lead of the game, 27-24. 10 minutes left. One of these teams going to the Super Bowl. As we said, the 49ers have the momentum, but Detroit has to really regroup here, and they need to do something. So now they seemed to get it. There was a pass that looked like it was going to be intercepted by the 49ers. Jamison Williams wrestles the ball away from the defender. Ambry Thomas was the defender on that one. So he wrestles the ball away, and it gives the Lions the ball right around midfield. And then they come up with a 4th and 3 again. It's 27-24. Could have tied the game with a field goal. They leave their offense on the field. And like we said on that last drive, when it was 4th down, the 49ers, now the Lions are a team that will run the ball. So there's that. But the 49ers are going to bring pressure. And they got Jared Goff on the move. And we said earlier, he cannot play well when he's on the move. And the pass was nowhere close to doing anything. With Amon-Ra St. Brown was wide open. The ball hit the ground a couple of yards away from him. It was just a horrific throw. And then now the 49ers had their ball on their own 10-yard line, about 7 minutes left, and they're up 3. Thoughts on that 4th down call? Is it okay you go for that one, or do you tie the game? What are you thinking?
That's the play call that disappointed me the most. That's the one that really stuck out. You have to take those points because you're giving the 49ers the ball with good field position. You're not tying the game. And then if they go and score a touchdown, the game's over. There wasn't enough time to climb out from a 10-point deficit, which we saw. So, all of these chances that Dan Campbell took, it came back and bite him at the absolute worst time.
So the Lions, as I said, in the second half, they were rushing forward. They were dropping more players in coverage, and they continued to play that way. And all of a sudden now with that a 3-point lead, the 49ers started to run the ball, and McCaffrey started to get chunks of yardage on the ground, lighter box. And obviously McCaffrey, you could tell he was just in hero mode here. I'm going to put the team on my back. I'm going to will this team. And they drive very efficiently down the field. McCaffrey gets the ball inside the 5. He needs a breather. Elijah Mitchell punches in the short touchdown. Now there are 3 minutes left. The 49ers are up 10. At halftime, the 49ers needed a small miracle. Now with 3 minutes left in the game, the Lions need a small miracle. Go ahead.
There wasn't enough time, and especially when you take that timeout away. I don't know. If I'm the Detroit Lions, you go back in retrospect, you tie the football game, and you try to still play from a tie ball game. I think it's the even playing field is a lot better than taking these chances, especially against a team like the 49ers, who are the superior football team. And when the 49ers went up 10 points, Lions, sure, they kept themselves in the football game. But then the most impossible play in the NFL is the onside kick. That's what you're left with. And I don't think it had to get there. It should have never gotten to that onside kick.
Nope. So with the Lions needing 2 scores, about 3 minutes left, I knew what the 49ers were going to do. They had a 2-possession lead. They would drop coverage and they would bring an extra rusher. So they would rush 5 or so, and then they would just put the rest of the players drop back. They would leave nothing in the middle of the field. The middle of the field would be open, take it, grind the clock, no problem at all. And that's what they did. And that's where I said earlier, I had the 49ers -7. I cashed in my bet. As soon as the 49ers went up 10, I go, they're going to let them walk down the field and just trade clock for points. And so I was able, fortunately, cash in that bet, made that 15% profit and walked away. And again, if you gamble on a legal sports book, always remember those options when you have a game that's on the fringe of covering. But anyway, back to the point. So the 49ers did that. They brought some pressure, but they dropped coverage, and the Lions just quickly down the field, and they were able to get a David. Now, here was the thing. Big error, in my opinion. They get the ball near the goal line, and the clock and the time is a very big thing. About a minute left in the game. Lions had 3 timeouts. If they score and they don't get the onside kick, the 49ers would still need a first down to end the game. They run David Montgomery from about the 5-yard line, and he comes up short. They had 2 choices: burn a timeout or burn clock. They burned a timeout. Now, by burning the timeout, they had to have the onside kick, as you intimated. But that timeout, they may not have had to. They could have held the 49ers, because the 49ers were probably going to run the ball on all 3 downs. They could have possibly held them and got it back. What did you think about the play call of running the ball in that scenario instead of throwing it in the end zone?
I think I was alluding to this earlier. I was mixing up the points in the game, but this is the point where I felt like Dan Campbell thought he can muscle his way into the end zone. If it works, he looks like a genius. But unfortunately, it didn't work, and you had to go burn that timeout. And that was a very crucial timeout that changed the dynamic of the last few minutes of this football game.
I mean, it's situational awareness, right?
Now, on top of that, I feel like we didn't kind of glazed over Jameson Williams, who made that big play. He catches, and I'm sure you're going to go the touchdown here. He was a first-round pick. He's no longer just getting eased back off of injury. The fact that Jameson Williams isn't getting more attention than Josh Reynolds, who dropped 2 passes in this football game, that to me also cost the Lions this game. Those 2 drops just as much as Dan Campbell's over-aggressiveness.
So here we have it. The 49ers pull off the minor miracle. The onside kick obviously wouldn't have worked even if they recovered, because the guy touched the ball like about half a yard before time is up. 49ers get the ball, and they're able to run two knees, I think it was. Or no, he ran the ball, ran it twice, and then Purdy had to scramble around for 2 seconds to kill the clock, and that was it. Ball game over. The 49ers advanced to the Super Bowl. Until Detroit had scored that late touchdown, San Francisco had scored the first 27 points of the second half. They showed mental toughness, ability to make adjustments. They also needed luck. And that's part of it when you're trailing that big, right? But in advancing through the NFC, now remember this, 49ers had a bye. They needed 10 points in the fourth quarter in a rainstorm to beat the Packers. So the Packers were the better team for a lot of that game. The Lions were a better team for a lot of this game. Over the course of the season, the 49ers were the best team. but they had a lot of adversity and some bad play design too. But they persevered. They now face the Chiefs for the title. Thoughts on the Niners?
Championship DNA is personified here. To be able to win different ways and come from adversity. And maybe you don't have the best quarterback built to come through that diversity, but they find ways. Purdy found ways. CMC puts the team on his back. Kittle quiet all game, made a big play. They have so many different ways they can beat you in so many different dynamics to this football team. You can see why they're the perennial Super Bowl favorites at the NFC.
When you mention the NFC, think about this. When you're in the AFC for years and years, you had to deal with Tom Brady. Now you got to deal with Patrick Mahomes. There's always somebody like stopping you from your dream. In the NFC, there is no such quarterback that's stopping you from your dream. And the 49ers continue to be, the big bad bullies here. And last year was the Eagles. So it's just very interesting how in the NFC, you can make up a lot of ground. But in the AFC, it's getting past that quarterback. But anyway, the Lions, it's just a bad beat for their fans. Feel terrible. Their fans, great fan base. This has been a long-suffering franchise. Dan Campbell's been aggressive all year. He had a great season. His team had a great season. He stuck with what got him to the game. I personally do question the situational awareness. That's me, but I understand that's his DNA, and that's what makes him who he is. So I don't know if he's capable of being someone different, and I don't know if they'd want someone different. But look, the Lions, had they kicked one of those field goals, maybe the game goes to overtime. I don't know that the 49ers would have played a shell on that last drive. They may have played it tougher, gotten Goff under pressure. Maybe it never would have got there, but we'll never know. Anyway, the Lions and fans, again, feels rough for you. Wish your team could have made it. Didn't happen. I'm sure many of the fans were making Super Bowl plans at halftime. I'm sure that was the case. Had a win under the belt, and unfortunately, that's not the case. There's no guarantee they're going to make it back to the NFC Championship game, but let's hope they continue to build on what they've done with this franchise. Anthony, thoughts on the Lions?
They played a hell of a year. They played a hell of a game. It does suck for their fan base. And they pan to different fans in the crowd. You could see it on their face. You could see the emotion. They had it. And I feel like it stings more losing this way than getting blown out. Like if you go into this game and the 49ers are controlling it the whole way, okay, hey, we're happy we got to the title game. We're probably never getting to the Super Bowl anyway, if we're being real. But if you have this type of a lead going into halftime, you are checking your phone. You are going to Expedia.com and trying to book your flight to the Super Bowl. So to lose this way, I don't think there's anything worse.
Man. All right. We will be back on this show Friday. I'll be doing the game or the breakdown of the Super Bowl. Give a full breakdown of the Super Bowl a week early. Get you ready for that. Remember Sirius XM channel 87 tonight, 8 to 10 Eastern. I'll be on going over a lot of the same shenanigans. And Anthony and I are going to be doing off-season podcasts every Monday starting in March. Anthony's being much more regular participant on this show with me. Excited about that. Any final words, Anthony?
No, happy to be here and looking forward to the offseason.
All right, and don't forget the marathon next week, Monday and Tuesday. This starting at 11 a.m. Eastern on Monday. We have an evening partner Tuesday. 58 analysts for Super Bowl 58. It's going to be quite the spectacle. Everybody follow Anthony at The Real NFL Guru. Follow me over at Jim Coventry NFL. Super Bowl notes will be ready to roll on Wednesday for sure. For Anthony Cervino, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a great day, everyone.